Production funding for this program was provided by the Alabama Humanities Foundation, a state program of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Additional funding was provided by Alabama Public Television and the Perry County Bank of Marion, Alabama.
I think the school made a difference in that Lincoln and the faculty tried to develop a whole person.
Lincoln provided the opportunity for people to become leaders. Lincoln provided the opportunity for people to learn how to attack problems. Lincoln provided the background and basis for people to learn how to overcome obstacles that were in their way.
The beauty and the permanence and the stability of the buildings and the institution was something that everybody was proud of. It was their country club, it was their school.
Lincoln School was far more than an educational institution. It was a cultural development center. It was a community service center.
Without hope, there's death. So at some point, a person has to have hope and faith in the future. Lincoln instilled that hope.
It was really a godsend to this community.
I believe it was a school ahead of its time because of the principles and values that it stood for.
Hello, I'm Julian Bond. It's been frequently said that each generation of students must rewrite its own school's history. No, not because history has to be brought up to date, nor even because of some discovery or finding about the past, but because of another equally important reason, which asks a central question about a school's history. Did the institution effectively prepare its graduates to face the pressures and the challenges of an all too exacting world? It's a demanding question, but there is a group of Black Americans with remarkable educational, social, and political achievements who can readily respond to it. They are very proud graduates of this quiet and historic institution, the Lincoln School of Marion, Alabama, whose outstanding legacy was first publicized by a scholar who thrived on learning and spent most of his life researching Black history and education. The scholar was my father, the late Dr. Horace Mann Bond. In 1960, my father was commissioned by the United States Office of Education to examine the specific factors which stimulate and encourage academic talent in poor communities. He questioned nearly 500 blacks who were holders of doctorates about their geographical and sociological backgrounds. And something amazing evolved. A large number of those persons interviewed traced their ancestry to Marion, Alabama. My father was further able to ascertain that family and community were indispensable partners in the success of these Black professionals. One of the strongest impacts on their lives was Marion's first Congregational Church. And, no less influential, was the nurturing paternalism of the Lincoln School. From his research, my father easily concluded that Lincoln School was the foremost Black secondary school that this country had ever known. This hall is the sacred place of all Lincoln School graduates, Phillips Memorial Auditorium. They call it home. It contains so many memories for them. Standing here, it's easy to see why this building has been preserved and why it just might be a reminder of a time when Black children stood right here and recited the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag. If you listen, you can hear them. Their voices full and resounding, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Their young voices still reverberate in this place because Lincoln School sincerely believed in the American dream of equality and prosperity. And that dream was instilled in everyone who came through these doors or sat in these seats. And today, There's more than ample proof of the success of the school's mission in the thousands of professionals it has spawned, among which are 25 blacks who hold doctorates. Think of it, 25. An astounding figure proportionately. Each of these professionals is a glowing example of the Lincoln School tradition. Yes, you can still hear them, with liberty and justice for all.
I think the academic programs there certainly influenced a person, but also the social development of the students there helped them a great deal. The extracurricular activities and the sense of caring by the faculty. We somehow, I believe, had instilled in us the desire to go ahead, and we felt that we could achieve, and if we wanted to do something, we could go ahead and do it. We felt good about ourselves, and I think this was instilled in us.
Well, the standards that I received at Lincoln influenced my life up until right now. I always wanted to do well. I always wanted to be a high achiever. I always wanted to get to the top, and that was instilled in me at Lincoln in my classes, by my teachers, and with contact with many of my students. So after I got out of Lincoln, if I was successful in one goal, I was not completely satisfied. I wanted to go on and achieve something else. And that influence is still with me.
Well, I think it let me know that you can achieve in spite of handicap or circumstance. If it had not been for Lincoln, growing up in a setting like Marion or Perry County, not only for me, but anybody in that type of setting, I don't believe that there would have been much advancement for them. There would have been no motivation, there would have been no stimulation. I shudder to think what I would have been had I not had that experience or that background. So I guess it is basic to any progress that I have made subsequently.
As we were growing up in Alabama, we learned from my father of the importance that Lincoln Normal School had in his background in his early years. It must have been between 1900 and 1910 that he was a student there. But he learned much more than you would think in elementary grades, because he had all of the basics in mathematics and English and language construction and civics and so on. But he also had something else that he used to tell us about. He developed a strong sense of racial pride.
The atmosphere was of such that I think it influenced my entire life. The white teachers that we had, although they were doing sort of a missionary service, I didn't ever feel that that was the atmosphere that they projected. We were their equals.
These men and women all hold doctorate degrees. Either they or their parents are graduates of Lincoln School. And the list goes on. Dr. Anna Porter Burrell, Dr. William Childs Curtis, Federal Judge William Henry Hasty, Dr. Robert C. Hatch, Sr., Dr. Earl McClinney, and Dr. John William Beverly.
We are here this weekend, as I have thought about it, because of what was instilled in us as students of Lincoln School. Because during that time, we came to know the meaning of camaraderie, and most of all, we came to know, respect, and appreciate education.
Chicago, Illinois, the land of Lincoln. The Lincoln School alumni met here in Chicago during July 1988 for 2 days. They poured into the city from all directions, from all sections of this vast country, to reminisce about the good old days, but also to laud the place that had reared them, set them on the straight and narrow path, and prepared them not only for today's trials and tribulations, but tomorrow's as well. And even though they were housed in one of America's busiest and bustling cities, their get-together was actually a warm, laughter-filled Marion, Alabama family reunion.
There is a feeling about Lincoln, a closeness, a bond, if you will, that has held us together, that makes us know what is important about Lincoln and what is important about blacks, or about education. And the school was about education, not training. When one is educated, one has learned more than a skill. And that is how we felt about Lincoln.
The purpose of the reunion is really for us to preserve something of our background and our heritage. It allows us the opportunity to be renewed. I know when I leave these reunions, I feel rejuvenated, and it gives us that. It affords us that type of opportunity.
This is a family gathering with years, not 5 years or 2 years, but the total years that we can come together and hug each other and know that the Lord has blessed in a special way.
Education for black people has always been a major proposition. We who attended Lincoln School, we who grew up in the hills of Alabama, knew well that education was about the only thing that we could get there that would make a difference in our lives.
The campus was just beautiful. It was just clean. They had, and the buildings were kept immaculate. They were very clean. And when you walk into the auditorium, I remember they had a motto, great big beautiful letters across the platform. It said, "The secret of success is obedience." And I can just see that motto now, just like it was. This is beautiful.
An empty lot, or so it appears, but if we try hard enough, we ought to be able to see them. Proud, solid buildings, plateaus of knowledge that once stood here amidst poverty and despair. Douglas Hall, Woolworth Hall, Ranney Hall, Van Wagenen Hall, and Livingston Hall. Each building distinct unto itself, yet each of them temples of enlightenment. All are gone now, swept into history's voluminous pages. Sadly, this vacant space is all that remains. The only real way to fully understand and appreciate the significance of Lincoln School is to first examine Marion's history, and then to trace the events that led up to the school's founding. I think we'll discover that the two are partly responsible for Lincoln's development.
Marion, the county seat of Perry County. Located about 100 miles southwest of Birmingham, it's situated in a region called the Black Belt because of its fertile black soil, well suited for growing cotton. It's an area also noted for its large black population. At the height of the antebellum period, the Black Belt was king of Alabama's political and economic affairs. Marion was a trading center for some of the state's largest cotton planters. It was, as one writer called it, a place of extensive legal transactions, resulting primarily from the endless purchase and sale of land and slaves. Both were needed for growing cotton. It became a glorious period for some, the affluent plantation owners, and humiliating bondage for others, the slaves who provided the labor that required excruciatingly long hours under the rays of an unmerciful sun. With the help of the wealthy Black Belt planters, early Marion became an educational and religious center. Marion's female seminary was organized in 1836. This is the building where Nicola Marshall, a Prussian artist, designed both the Confederate flag and the Confederate soldier's uniform. The seminary was closed in 1918. Judson College, one of the oldest women's colleges in the United States, was established in 1838. And in 1842, Howard College was founded. It moved to Birmingham in 1888 and was later renamed Samford University. Marion Military Institute was created out of Howard College. These new institutions of higher learning and profits from cotton directly enriched Marion's cultural growth. It was no wonder that the literacy level among whites was so high, and not so surprising that it impacted tremendously on Perry County's domestic slaves.
So in many instances, the house servants lived right in the house with the master, or either in a house right in the yard. And they were exposed to all of the culture of their master's family. And it made a difference. It rubbed off, you know.
The Civil War ended finally, mercifully. It had gone on too long. There had been too much bloodshed, and too many lives had been wasted. The war's end gave way to a period of Reconstruction, which marked the social and economic rehabilitation of the South. There was a new word, a new notion riding the crest of a wind that gusted throughout the entire South. The new word, freedom. In Marion, as well as throughout the rest of the defeated Confederacy, blacks ran for political office and sought previously denied educational opportunities with an avenging fervor.
This building behind me is the Perry County Courthouse. In 1854, it was constructed by the blood, sweat, and tears of men in bondage. But in the irony of Reconstruction, hundreds of former slaves stood in line outside this same building and registered to vote. By 1867, not only was 65% of Perry County's population black, but 94% of all registered voters were black. Yet while these political gains were being garnered, through the help of federal troops, carpetbaggers, and scalawags, formal education was elusive and stayed well beyond the frustrated grasp of most blacks.
Education in the South and the antebellum period is for leadership. It's for leadership, and it's something that you do if you have money and you can afford to have it done for your child. There is not a sense that you have a public concern to educate someone else's child. And that goes right on through to the post-Civil War period. So these people do not feel that it is their problem to educate somebody else's child who cannot afford to provide education for that child. And it's a dramatic break with the past to have a public concern in the late 1870s for people who cannot afford to educate their own children. And suddenly you're starting to educate black people who before the war were not educated, and you're dealing with a sense or a feeling that this is not something that before the war you cared about. It was a private matter.
January 10, 1871. In no place in the South is there a more hopeful class of colored people than in Marion, Alabama.
Early records showed that Perry County's blacks desperately wanted an education. Their drive was strong and they would not be denied. They also ached to participate in the area's governmental and business affairs. Those same records show that on July 17, 1867, 9 determined emancipated slaves, filled with the notion of freedom, drew up a petition to establish a school in honor of the man who'd helped to free them, Abraham Lincoln.
These men were intent on trying to establish a school to educate their children. They felt that even if they were given a chance, and some were given a chance to become involved in politics, they felt that they would be better prepared if they were educated. And they felt that the only hopes for their children was an education.
It seemed to be a small effort, the founding of Lincoln, but actually it was the beginning of something quite remarkable, an educational institution built on a solid rock of optimism that would guide black families to the throne of knowledge in Perry County for 104 years. 104 years. Those 9 emancipated men of vision unequivocally believed that a better way of life lay in a good, solid education.
The first task of the founders was to find a building to house the school, which they did. But immediately, a problem arose. They were unable to find teachers, and needless to say, pay them a salary. Yet, where there is a will, there is a way, and on September 10, 1868, Lincoln's founding trustees established an operating agreement with the American Missionary Association, an auxiliary of the Congregational Church. The school buildings and grounds were leased to the American Missionary Association without charge. In return, the association agreed to maintain the property, recruit and pay the teachers. In addition, a 7-month school term would be held each year. The deed was now done, and an institution was born.
Well, of course, with the end of the Civil War, there was absolutely no provision for public education for blacks. There was some provision made in the state of Alabama during the Reconstruction era after 1867 in both laws and the Constitution, but the matter of financing the education was quite a different matter. And most of the education that was provided for blacks during this period was provided by philanthropic institutions such as the American Missionary Association.
As scores of well-intended and enthusiastic missionary groups pushed southward and fanned out over the entire South, some of Marion's conservative whites clamored for a separate educational system for blacks. There was only one catch, however. They insisted that the teachers be Southern whites.
The local whites viewed by providing blacks with an education, however, doing it with local white teachers, they could still keep the blacks in a servile role, yet in the meantime, gaining their allegiance or loyalty to them, which would later be transferred into the political arena, particularly at the end of the Congressional Reconstruction period.
July 13th, 1872. Last Sabbath was a day of rejoicing. 10 adults were added to our church. One had been a bartender and only a few weeks since had drank $30 worth of whiskey, simply because he could collect his pay in no other way. The whole church made him a special subject of prayer.
This is the First Congregational Church of Marion, organized 1869. The sanctuary itself was built in 1870. Its grace and elegance are impressive and indeed the product of thoughtful minds. During its formative years, this church and Lincoln School worked in tandem in nurturing Marion's black community. Lincoln's principal usually served as the Congregational Church's pastor. The impression should not be made here that everything went smoothly. No, not at all. It wasn't a bed of roses. There were moments when some of Marion's white citizens made things difficult and perilous. After white resistors threatened to kill Thomas Stewart, this church's first pastor, Lincoln's original principal, the American Missionary Association quickly rushed Stewart a stack of Bibles and rifles. There was also a note attached. Mr. Stewart, it is our profound hope you'll have greater use for the Bibles.
September 1870. It is wonderful in how short a time these pupils have become accustomed to school life, and how rapidly they have improved in appearance as well as intelligence. There are many among them who give promise of much future usefulness.
The 1870s and 80s. Lincoln's enrollment is growing by leaps and bounds. Marion's blacks are convinced that education is going to bring the equality that the Emancipation Proclamation only pays lip service to. 1873 arrives. The state of Alabama establishes Lincoln Normal University in Marion. Its teacher training facility is one of the first state-supported universities for blacks developed after the Civil War. Lincoln School is now merged with the university.
May 1879. This year, the school has taken a fresh start, having enrolled 217 pupils, and a new building is about to be erected for their accommodation. In the normal department for the training of teachers, there are classes in Latin, Greek, French, as well as the higher English branches. Its pupils sustain a weekly literary society for weekly essays and discussions, and they also publish a monthly paper.
For 13 years, the two divisions of Lincoln worked well together, and then disaster hits. A raging, indiscriminating fire destroys a large portion of the school. Its origin, a mystery. Suspicion abounds, and now, under the gathering clouds of controversy, Lincoln University is moved to Montgomery, Alabama, over the objection of Marion's black community. The year is now 1887. Today, that institution is known as Alabama State University.
Immediately after Reconstruction, when the white terrorist organization, the Ku Klux Klan, and the white comedian had driven the majority of blacks out of the polls, the voting process, blacks concentrated on the educational process. And there's a wonderful letter written by Stephen Childs in 1887 to the governor expressing these views when the school was about to be removed from Marion and moved to Montgomery. He states that blacks since the mid-70s, 1870s, had gotten out of the political process and concentrated on educating their kids and giving them a better way of life. But now he was undecided whether that was the best way to go. He saw that both processes went hand in hand.
Stephen Childs, January 12, 1887. Most of us have abandoned politics and have devoted our time and labor to securing homes, making an honest living, and educating our children. There are about 300 children of school age around Marion. We're not able to send them off, and we must educate them here. It will be hard for us to do it if the school is moved. But believing as we do that education is about all that this generation can give their children, we are determined to do our duty.
When the American Missionary School came here, the black people were just out of slavery. And they were inspired to try to emulate those teachers that taught them. And their ideals were very high. And I think as years passed, so many blacks became disillusioned because things just didn't work out like they thought they would. They felt that if they were, I think a lot of blacks at that time felt if they were educated or if their children were educated, they would be accepted as first-class citizens, and that just didn't happen.
In 1896, Mary Elizabeth Phillips became Lincoln's sixth principal. Astute, well-educated, she was only 16 years of age when she began her teaching career. On arriving at Lincoln, she was rudely and unceremoniously greeted by the deteriorating condition of the school. It was overwhelming, intimidating to say the least, and perhaps enough to drive a lesser motivated person away. But not Mary Phillips. With little hesitation, she pitched right in, toiling day and night to try to save a patient who appeared terminal.
They started to build in this building, Livingston Hall, which was the first brick building on the campus. It was started, the men struck when they were about half through with it, I guess. And at that time, she told them she could get no more money, that she would not be able to pay them anymore. So she stayed out of school several days and learned how to lay brick. And she came back to the classroom and she called all the boys together and told them, if they would let her teach them how to lay brick. She would teach them their lessons while they built the school building. And so that was what happened. And that was a line of demarcation where experience ended and inexperience started.
I remember she was a tough customer. That's just my way of saying it. And that's the way we used to say it when we were students. She's a tough customer. We feared her, not as somebody who was gonna kill us or hurt us, but we thought in terms of her as a top leader, a top principal, who was a strict disciplinarian and who really knew how to operate a school.
Mary Phillips, 1904. One of the unique features of our work is our new boarding department. Last year there were 61 of these boarders. This year, 91, with 40 who board outside in families.
Mary Phillips died on March 2, 1927. She had done her work well on Earth. Lincoln School was flourishing. There were 600 students now and 26 faculty members, and the campus was thriving as well. It now contained 11 buildings. What a far cry from when Mary Phillips made her first appearance at Lincoln. In 1938, Phillips Memorial Auditorium was built. It was a well-deserved tribute to Mary Elizabeth Phillips, a woman of her time and of all times.
"1919. Every room in our girls' dormitory is taken for this year, and I am now turning away fine, promising girls who are longing to get a place in the school."
Well, the boarding department was very active because many students came from the rural section. And not only from the rural section, but all parts of Alabama. We had students, I remember when I was in school, there was one girl from Brooklyn, New York. Her parents sent her back here to school. We had even from California. And we had many students from Mississippi.
April 1924. We have received many pitiful letters from the parents of the boarding hall students begging us to give their children work to help pay for their board, since they could not get the money themselves. They are eager to work or do anything for the school and will make any sacrifice for an education.
It is 2 years now after Mary Phillips' death. There is a new enemy, a more formidable one, affecting the entire fabric of the American society. The enemy, the Depression. It strikes hard at the school and at the already poverty-stricken blacks of Perry County. Many of the sharecroppers who have sent their children to Lincoln as boarding students can no longer afford to pay the tuition. Reluctantly, agonizingly, a large number of them take their equally despondent sons and daughters out of the school and put them back to work in the fields. It is but the beginning of an avalanche whose gathering force is too momentous to be stopped. 1932, Lincoln School's boarding department closes.
The 5 years that I was there prior to graduation, we saw the number of boarding students who came in decrease. When we first went there, the boarding department was always full, and they had to turn away both male and female students from those departments. But as the years went by during the Depression, the parents were not able to send them, and the boarding department went down where there were fewer students each year. And after that, it did close through necessity. Because there were not enough students to provide for it.
By the late 30s, distressingly few of Alabama's black children were enrolled in school. Even more disturbing and yet a concrete reality was the fact that the average rural or public school term for young blacks in the state's Black Belt was less than 5 months of the year. This was in very sharp contrast to Lincoln School, who, come hell or high water, somehow managed to maintain a 9-month school term.
The idea that we presume that every school system functions on a 9-month basis does not exist here. We don't have a 9-month school term across this state in, say, a majority of the counties until you get over into the Depression era. It's really after the Depression that you get, in the late 1930s, the school system even standardized to say 8 or 9 months across the state. In this period, if you can have a school system 3, 4, 5 months a year in a county, you're doing very, very well.
I remember when I was teaching at this rural school right down the road here, many a day, I had just 2 or 3 students for the simple reason they were too small to work in the fields. And their parents were living on those plantations down there, and if the boss man said, "We're going to pick cotton," they picked cotton, and they didn't come to school until that cotton was picked, unless it rained. That would make a difference. The weather was too cold to plow in the spring, then school would stay open until it was warm enough for them to go to the fields.
September 29, 1947. Perry County still appears to be a cotton county. Cotton still determines when children shall enter school. Likewise, it is a part of the tradition for the Negro minister to include with his words of God the best way for "yes, sir" to be said so as to please the white folks.
This is a 1907 Lincoln High School final exam. It covers 9 major subjects: literature, ancient history, spelling, physiology, algebra, English, history, physics, and the Bible. I'd say that's rigorous by any standard. But a comprehensive academic program was always an essential part of Lincoln's educational process. Its teachers constantly encouraged their students to dare to achieve. They forced them to look beyond the limited horizons and opportunities provided by Perry County, and to dream the impossible dream through a strict curriculum that contained courses ranging from the arts to agriculture. There's no doubt in my mind, when students left Lincoln, they left prepared.
We studied opera, which was not a part of the state curriculum. It's atypical to any school. I imagine the other school didn't have that. So I would say that the educational programs were quite challenging and quite varied. And I think that attributes to the fact that many of the graduates or those who had that exposure did well when they went elsewhere.
It had such a thorough grounding, not a familiarization course, total command of algebra and geometry, and in an introduction to trigonometry, English literature, and prose and poetry and writing.
January 8, 1941. The objective of our curriculum is to give those who attend Lincoln School practical and useful educational experiences, which will enable them to improve their immediate surroundings and take their place in a democratic society.
The teachers that came to Lincoln School basically had an understanding of what they wanted to teach, the direction in which they wanted to go, the direction in which they wanted the students to go. The goals were set, the curriculum was important for the development of young people, and it was just an effective school for the development of young blacks here in Marion, Alabama.
It seems that those people were well trained in teaching, more so than maybe local people. And they came here and they offered all sorts of things. And it was totally different because it has been said just more times than you can even remember how you knew a Lincoln student at that time. It was something about the background, the culture, you know, how it was, how we were motivated. and to not be fearful and afraid of anybody, those kinds of things. You stand up for whatever you thought was good. And they stood beside you. They were right there all the time.
February 1924. It was the morning for chapel service. The faculty took their places on the platform. Up the stairs came a steady stream of black and brown boys and girls. Nearly 400 bright, eager faces were looking up to us, and I realized why I was there.
It helped me to know that all people weren't like those, pardon me for saying that. It let me know that all white people weren't like these that I lived with all my life down here. Because they were kind, they were considerate, and you heard no racial slurs or anything. But I remember when we would go to town and go to some of the merchant store and ask for certain things. She go to, Yankee school. And you know, those were expressions that we hear from the people, local people that lived around. But we didn't hear that type of thing at school.
1928. At Lincoln School, we have an unusual opportunity to help in the big adventure of world brotherhood. Here are members of both races living and working together for the common good of all.
In 1943, America was well into a war against the Axis. On the home front, the country is rallied, responding to the war effort with dedicated effort to defeat its enemies. Patriotic songs and speeches, war bonds, and gas rationing are part of the order of the day. But life on the home front doesn't concern itself solely with beating the Germans and the Japanese. It is a continuum. There are other things that have to be dealt with. While the Perry County Board of Education begins to provide limited financial assistance to Lincoln School, Alabama's segregation laws prohibit black and white teachers from working together in a publicly funded school. It is the worst of all home front disasters in Marion. The American Missionary Association's white faculty members are forced to leave, even though they've devoted their very souls to Lincoln. And now, a painful odyssey begins. A 10-year journey during which Lincoln is changed from a unique private institution into a state-controlled public high school. It is the only public high school for blacks in Perry County, even though 80% of the county's population is now black.
A million things come to my mind, things that made such an impression. Because we were young and impressionable, there isn't a day that goes by that something doesn't flash into my mind that I have been reminded again of something that happened at Lincoln.
It's like a photo album. Every page is exciting, and everything that happened was exciting. We woke up in the morning looking forward to teaching and looking forward to meeting our kids and all that sort of thing. There was nothing, I don't remember ever being sorry that I went down there.
Tennant's Harbor is as beautiful a harbor village as one might expect to find in the rustic geography of Maine. It's a haven to those who covet serenity. It's also the home of Wilfred and Irene Gamble, who are graduates of Columbia University's Teachers College and were members of the last American Missionary Association faculty to direct Lincoln School in 1943.
I was interested in education and not in who the students were. I was only interested in teaching, and it didn't matter to me. It just didn't matter. See, my background, my original background was, as I said, in Northern Ireland, where there were no blacks, and I did not have to unlearn any prejudices that I might have, that sometimes people acquire. So I didn't have to unlearn anything, and it didn't matter to me what color the kids were.
And in the early days, I think many of the teachers went down there with a strong sense of mission. Now, we didn't do that. It just wasn't in our backgrounds. And we went delighted to have this opportunity to teach, and quite quickly finding out that not only did we have what to us were very good jobs at that time, but that we could put into practice those things which we had just learned in our progressive college.
I had a professor at Columbia University named Thomas Briggs, who had a philosophy of education which seemed to me to apply to Lincoln School when I went down there. He stated that one of the golden rule of education was to teach children to do better the desirable things that they're likely to do anyway, and then to go beyond that a step and to make other things desirable and possible to them, to widen their horizons so that they wouldn't only do the things that they're likely to do anyway, but that there was speculation in the educational process. If we had taught children in Marion to do only the things that they're likely to do anyway at that time, they would become better farmers maybe, and better cooks, and better washerwomen, and better painters, and better carpenters. But there's something beyond that, and some of these children had other possibilities. So we had to speculate and say some of these children may become speakers or writers or whatever. And so we had to take a chance.
If there has been one thing in our lives that has given our lives an extra dimension, it is our experience at Lincoln School. It was different. It taught us things that other people have no way of knowing. Even we feel we only scratched the surface of the mentality of the South and the segregation and the conflict and all of this, but still, we had a pretty good exposure, and it taught us a great deal. And of course, it did no harm at all to our careers, none at all. If anything, it is the one thing that we have to contribute to any discussion of education, which is different and further.
Lincoln took ordinary kids and really gave them a love of learning and a sense of learning. But in those days, the segregational patterns were so rigid, some of the brightest and some of the best were demoralized.
Andrew Jackson Young arrived in Marion in the summer of 1952. Young, a noted civil rights leader, rewrote history by becoming Georgia's first black congressman since Reconstruction and America's first black ambassador to the United Nations. He was elected mayor of Atlanta in 1982. As an aggressive Hartford Seminary student, Young served as pastor of Marion's First Congregational Church. There he met Jean Childs, a 1950 graduate of Lincoln School. Cupid shot his arrow, and they were married in 1954 in the First Congregational Church of Marion.
Up until that point, I was interested in the ministry, but I was really thinking more in terms of a recreational ministry, some kind of social work. The First Congregational Church is the first time that I had to preach every Sunday, and it turned out it wasn't so bad. In fact, I even enjoyed it. And the people were so warm and so loving and so friendly. It was an easy group to talk to, and it was a great community in which to be involved.
I think it was the exposure that we had to ideas that were not confined to Marion, Alabama. We were steeped in black culture, and we knew about great African kingdoms that existed prior to slavery. And so we cultivated a sort of appreciation for ourselves in the midst of segregation. And I remember thinking that, isn't it interesting that people would think of us as being inferior? Because we heard it from the church, we heard it from our school, and we heard it from our family, that we were not inferior to anyone. And we learned so much about the broader world that we knew that there was a life beyond Marion, Alabama.
It was
the kind of experience in the rural South that let you know that there had to be something to bring about change. At that time, I didn't know for sure what. But in terms of getting to know the South, black and white, the people of the South, the political, economic, and social conditions, so that at least you knew what the problem was. The problem in Marion, Alabama was quite different from the problem of New Orleans, Louisiana, where I grew up, or Washington, D.C., where I went to school, which was also, at that time, still fairly segregated. But not quite, the segregation in the rural South was quite different. And that was something we had to address. And of course, the movement eventually brought me back to Selma, which is where Jean and I had our first date, and Marion.
I think Lincoln School expanded my world, my view of the world, and my appreciation, I guess, for my own assets.
Coretta Scott King, widow of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., slain civil rights activist, a leader in the Montgomery bus boycott, Nobel Peace Prize laureate, American patriot. Mrs. King is a 1945 graduate of Lincoln School. She and Dr. King met in Boston while she was attending the New England Conservatory of Music, and he was earning his doctorate in theology from Boston University. They fell deeply in love. In 1953, they were married in Mount Pabo AME Zion Church in Perry County.
I learned at Lincoln School not only the basics in terms of subject matter, but the teachers taught me values. My parents had instilled in me certain values that I have been able to use throughout my life, and Lincoln School reinforced those values of love and concern for others, of sharing and giving, and of honesty and treating people the way you'd like to be treated.
The 1960s came to Marion, Alabama, and to the rest of America. It came headlong and furtive without apology. Its feature attraction was an often bloody and violent civil rights movement that insisted on equal treatment and justice for everyone in this country. These were crucial, pressing times, unlike any America had ever seen. The battle for social equality had begun, and hope, fire, and smoke filled the reverberating air. Like most of America, Marion wasn't spared from the dark side of the struggle. In 1965, Jimmy Lee Jackson, a Lincoln graduate, was brutally killed during a protest demonstration. Outrage quickly permeated the black community. Plans were ignited for a protest march, its route and destination from Marion to Montgomery. But the leaders of the march changed their plans. The march would begin in Selma. Its objective was still Montgomery. In 1970, 5 years after Jimmy Lee Jackson's death, blacks in Marion were dealt another stunning blow. Lincoln School was officially closed. Why? Who and what was responsible for this new tragedy? Strangely enough, its name was Progress. Perry County's desegregation plan had done the job. Demolition teams moved in quickly. Walls and ceilings were smashed into indistinguishable rubble. A dream that had taken over a century to build was destroyed in a few days. An era had indeed ended.
The community lost a leader and a focal point. Lincoln was something that black people felt like they owned. It was that shelter we felt we could go to and discuss our problems. It is the thing that we governed and ran, and we developed. And with that gone, we lost a sense of togetherness. We lost a sense of community of purpose.
When they brought the saws there and cut those trees, it just took something out of me. It was just like piercing an arrow in my heart. I just hated to see that done, but there was nothing I could do. Then the other buildings were dismantled and torn down. And it was just a sad thing because Lincoln always, to me, was like holy ground.
It was Frederick Douglass who once said so eloquently, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." The struggle about which Douglass spoke is epitomized by Lincoln School's history, a constant forward striving in which minds were always becoming enlightened. Lincoln School's legacy is a monumental testimony to a community and to an institution that adopted higher educational and achievement standards than most. Only pure determination changed this magnificent school into what it ultimately became, an oasis where ambitions were rewarded and hopes fulfilled. It's discouraging, however, when we see giant black institutions like Lincoln cast away in the name of progress and racial integration. It seems all too unreasonable and unfair. But it reminds us that life by nature is often cruel, yet in each negative situation, there's generally something positive to be found. Lincoln School's impact is one that will continue to provide incentive for many black Americans for many generations to come. We welcome the Lincoln School as an indelible part of our history. I'm Julian Bond, and this has been Where Once We Stood.